in a post-matric frenzy, more than 500,000 matriculants are scrambling for limited higher education spaces, which begs the question of how tertiary institutions are addressing the issue of legacy of admissions. For more on this conversation, we're now joined by Dr. Laura Fisher, who is the head of institutional advancement at Boston City Campus. Dr. Fisher, thank you for joining us tonight. Now, there was much jubilation earlier this year when the matric results were released, with an increase of those who passed with a bachelor's, giving them access to institutions of higher learning. But clearly, our institutions of higher learning can't accommodate all these students.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really shocking reality to realize that almost 4.5 applications were received this year, and of those, less than a quarter will be admitted, with the expected enrollment of first years being around 210,000 students. So, as you say, there was jubilation, and now there's kind of the, well, what now? We have got our acceptance certificates, but we can't get anywhere with them. So I think tertiary institutions really need to redress this legacy admission and teaching practice in order to accommodate for the numbers of young South Africans that are really eligible and wanting to study in tertiary institutions.
What happens to those students? I mean, they've worked hard, they've achieved the results that they needed to get. They probably went and did the research to find out which subjects they need to take to excel at, to be able to get into the courses of their choice, and then to be faced with the reality that there's just not enough space. It's not that you didn't do enough work. What then happens to those learners?
I think that the first thing for me is that a sense of disillusionment sets in, and I really want to encourage those that are listening to not let that sense of disillusionment set in. There are other avenues to get to where you want to go to. There's not just one fixed path. So, online solutions exist. There's no physical restraints in the online space. And students, provided that they have the right criteria, can be accommodated in online environments such as Boston City Campus. South African universities are really grappling with an overwhelming influx of applications, but really redressing this issue of tertiary education only being available to some and not others is a massive problem for us. And so we need to shift our aim to really address those who haven't got in to their kind of desired course and say, well, what else can you look at? How else could you perhaps achieve your medium to long-term goals? And I think that's really important. I really want to send the message to young South Africans that just because you didn't get into your desired course does not mean that the road looks hopeless for you. There are many different ways to get in. Starting with a higher certificate in the specific discipline is a really good way to get in, and then carrying that on through to a diploma or a degree or an honors degree or a master's degree. All of these are different ways of envisaging how your career trajectory can play itself out.
And it's quite encouraging that you do mention, all these other options that can be pursued, because the reality is that there will be millions of students like that who are looking for such options. If we're looking at numbers that 4.5 million applied for university and only 210,000 got space, that leaves, the majority of the students who tried to get into university out in the lurch.
I know. I mean, I just feel that looking at the latest statistics SA quarterly report for 2023, the high youth unemployment rate obviously creates this atmosphere of disillusionment and discontentment and a sense of where are we going from here? But really, I want to reiterate to students who are wanting to go and study, really explore your options. Your only option is not a degree. Your options are way more expansive than that. And, you know, at Boston City campus, we are still accepting late registrations, and I think that's important to be said. Other private institutions are also doing that, and it's really important to keep in mind what you really wanted to achieve and then go for it. Start with a higher certificate. Start with getting into a diploma, then get into your degree, then get into your honors degree. You know, access and widening of access is something that we are grappling with as institutions of higher learning, and we really want to accommodate as many students as we can, but unfortunately we've also got a legacy policy in place that allows us to only accept certain kinds of students. And redress, equity and access is the name of the game, and so really don't stop pursuing. If you've received a negative outcome on your initial application, don't stop pursuing. Look at different avenues. Be creative, be innovative. That's what's going to take you forward into the future.
And Dr. Fisher, just speaking of some of these legacy issues as well, what should institutions of higher learning be doing to ensure that this legacy of the way that admissions work changes? I mean, should they perhaps maybe look at technology, perhaps building more institutions? What is the solution?
Yeah, I mean, because of the high correlation, particularly between the higher education and employment, and then when we look at our unemployment stats, you know, if you just get a 1 year post-matric qualification, you are so much more employable. So I think that what universities need to do is they need to accept that the world is much more accessible online. We need to have more flexible admissions criteria, and we need to put more proactive measures in place to expand capacity to really absorb these applicants that are very good applicants. And please do not see a decline of your application as an indictment on you. Rather see it as an indictment on the system and its lack of ability to really absorb you into its system. And we are in the business of changing. We are in the business of really trying to create spaces. Boston City campus has an online facility that can accommodate many students. So start looking for those sorts of avenues to really begin to get your career trajectory going.
Let's talk about the admission point score. You know, what are some of its advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, so the admissions point score is a real kind of controversial issue. In South Africa, there's two main types of requirements for university. The first is that your admissions point score, which is calculated from an individual's examination-specific matric marks, with each percentage equaling a specific point. And then the second option, which is used by private tertiary institutions, which allows for a bachelor's pass depending on the mark category offered to the matric certificate. These two kind of options of looking at the APS are very important, because if you haven't got into a public university, you need to start to explore the private space. And the APS is a great thing in that it affirms to us as individuals, we've got what it takes to make it. Let's be innovative, creative, entrepreneurial. Let's not give up the first set of obstacles that come in our way, but really push forward and look at the different ways that the APS can be used. in the traditional public sector, and then in the more kind of open and embracing private sector, where arms are open wide. We're saying, come into the fold. Our registrations are open until the 9th of March, in fact, at Boston City campus. So don't feel disheartened. Feel encouraged. You've got what it takes. You've just got to take the next step. And that step is one of faith and one of optimism and one that you should take. There's 47 support centers around the country that Boston offers. Give them a call and speak to a career guidance counselor who's really going to advise you as to the best way to achieve your dreams.
This has been so helpful and also quite encouraging. I think it's very important that we also bring the options that are available so that people don't feel distressed and anxious. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. That was Boston City Campus Head of Institutional Advancement, Dr. Laura Fisher.